What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up Podcast. My name is Cameron, and I am joined, as ever, by Mr. Crawford of the Lewis.
Very nice way to introduce me, hey? How are we doing?
I'm pretty good, man. Can I refer to you as Uncle Lewis at this point, or is that weird?
It's weird.
It is. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? Welcome to episode 51 of Games Up Podcast. Welcome to our second official iTunes episode. If you're listening there, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's very good of you. We've had a good week, but we're going to get straight into the news because that's what you're here for. So, first piece of news this week is that Spyro the Dragon may be getting a PS4 trilogy remaster thing in the style of the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. It's been rumoured for a little while. There was a piece of art that dropped, which is like a very Unreal Engine 4 looking version of Spyro the Dragon 1, and that basically it may be one of their big reveals for E3. The reason I put this piece of news into our list this week is because I want to kind of plead. I want to use what little platform we have with podcasts to beg and plead to Sony to please don't do this because my rent is due soon, and my wallet hurts. So that Lewis, what do you think of this? Do you think this is going to happen?
Yeah, I could see it happening. I mean, I don't know where Spyro lies, but I can understand them trying to do everything they can to bring these old games back, especially when the reaction that Crash got, I'm certain that will happen again with Spyro.
Yeah, Activision must have definitely seen the benefits of offering that partnership there, and you've got to imagine that they're going to try and capitalise on it as much as possible, which they are well within their rights to do. Interesting to see whether this has quite the same response as Crash, but I think it's probably not far off that it will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to do something. I mean, the thing is that this is ultimately one of the advantages that Sony have in the exclusive game is that because they've been around longer, they have these very early games like Spyro and like Crash to go forwards with. So yeah, so I think they will. I could see it happening, especially now that we've had Crash. It seems very likely.
Yeah, we talked about how last week how Sony are really leveraging their old franchises for kind of retro weight, as it were, to really cash in on the nostalgia of them, and it makes total sense. So, news number 2 this week is that Scalebound, Microsoft may have in fact have heard our pleas from last week. They did, because they dropped an exclusive game this week. They re-upped Phantom Dust and dropped it, although they dropped it and announced it was free literally the next day, which doesn't seem like a particularly clever marketing tool. Might have been a good one for E3. But the bigger news for Microsoft this week is that Scalebound, which was cancelled in March, don't quote me on that, it might have been February or April, it was certainly around March, may not have actually been cancelled. Microsoft has seemingly, from what we've seen online from a number of sources and a couple of images which seem to confirm this, has renewed the trademark for Scalebound, meaning that what we know of Scalebound may not be dead. Now, it seems fairly certain to assume that if this game does exist, it's not being developed by Platinum anymore. It seems fairly fair to assume that what did exist of this game will not be what it is when we see it, or certainly not close to it. It might be built on that, but it certainly won't be the demos we saw. And it probably seems fair to say that this isn't something we'll see soon. But I don't know how to feel about this one, Lewis. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because what we saw at E3 was something that looked not, close, but it didn't look too far off. So there seems like there was an amazing amount of work already put into it. Now, I'm not certain, but I think they have confirmed that it's not being done by Platinum anymore. So, and they're going for something completely afresh, but with the same idea. And then it's like, what kind of idea is behind Scalebound anyway at this point? When they say they're going forward, is it still going to be, riding dragons and headphones, and like all that? So, I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting move, and I'm not certain kind of what they've got behind it anyway. It seems like if they were going to drop the game, then it could just as easily change the IP and move elsewhere. I don't know.
I know what you mean. I think it speaks to something, to Microsoft being aware of an issue. We said last week that of all the games that Microsoft had in their sort of deck of cards, Scalebound was the one that looked the most interesting and the one that looked of the highest caliber. It looked like the one that could pull Microsoft forward to where they need to be, and if Microsoft have renewed this trademark really in quite a sudden fashion, it shows that they're aware of an issue here. It's telling that we haven't heard news similar to this for something like Fable. We haven't heard news similar to this for some of the franchises that Rare own. This is Microsoft kind of acknowledging that they made a mistake here. And I wonder whether what they're going... it's going to be really interesting when we do see this for the first time, because I think there's two ways that this can go. The first way is they renew the IP, give the IP to a developer, whoever it be, and say, in 3 years we want a Scalebound. We want a game and it to be called Scalebound. Alternatively...
Yeah.
There's a potential that what they do is renew the IP and buy whatever Platinum did for them, give that to a developer and say, make this work, and here's Scalebound this year, or close to it. I think if I had to put money on one camp or the other, I think I'd put it in the latter. I don't think it makes any sense for Microsoft to come out in 3 years and be like, oh, here's Scalebound, that game you forgot about already. But I do think it makes sense for them to go, we know you wanted it, so here it is. I don't know how realistic this is. It probably isn't something they can do. But I don't know. I can kind of see this being Scalebound more immediately. And it might turn out to be a lot more broken as a result.
I don't think it will be. I think one of the things is they tend to apply for trademark quite early in general. So, I mean, we only know about this because, someone was looking out for it, looking out for it being renewed. So I think it's likely that whatever this is, it will be a while yet, especially considering that whoever's looking after it now potentially has only had it for a matter of months.
I don't know. The reason that I think this is because the trademark wasn't going to run out anytime soon. This wasn't something that they had to do. Nobody was forcing their hand here. Something has changed inside Microsoft that means they have to have Scalebound.
But the strange thing is that they're not having Scalebound, though. They're having the name Scalebound and maybe the idea of Scalebound, but not the Scalebound that we saw at E3.
See, me and you have differing opinions on this. Do you think that it's Platinum and as an extension Kamiya that makes it Scalebound?
Well, I mean, potentially. I mean, if we saw... I mean, like, if that's the basis of what we saw, then it seems like giving the idea and giving the name to someone else doesn't make it a good game or a good IP. And we've seen that with plenty of series in the past, that passing on the idea to someone else doesn't make it good, necessarily. So I don't know. And I'm also kind of a fan of Platinum games at the moment, so...
Don't get me wrong, I love Platinum games. But I think Platinum games were the problem here. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think Platinum games have so many projects on at the minute. They have so many projects on. And you said it yourself when this news came out and we were chatting about it. They were probably focusing more on their PS4 exclusive than their Xbox One exclusive, because you've got to imagine that the way the install base shifted very quickly since the start of the generation, there was more of an incentive to do so. And the truth is there in the sales numbers. I think that there is nothing stopping Microsoft giving those demos and those systems and those ideas to another developer and saying, make this for us. Make it like the Platinum game, but without Platinum's name. And I think, in a way, that could kind of be good, because, yes, it's kind of dodgy to have Platinum do all the groundwork and come up with the great ideas and then just offshore it to someone else. But equally, I don't think there was ever a way that this game was coming out safely and well from Platinum. I think it was either going to come out as a train wreck or not come out at all. And I think I'd rather that Scalebound be good and know that it came from what Platinum did than Scalebound be bad and know that it came out of what Platinum did.
Yeah, true. And I guess, I mean, it's funny to talk about other developers taking on games when Platinum famously has quite a lot of games that they have taken from other IPs.
Actually, speaking of Platinum IPs, we're going to run through two very quick stories here. Sega have announced this week that by 2020 they intend to have re-upped a bunch of their franchises and given them a sort of a second go and a proper name. Guess what Sega and Platinum own? Vanquish. Haha, please give us Vanquish 2. Secondly, speaking of games that definitely deserve a second chance and get it, Life is Strange 2 was announced this week. It's being developed. Development has started. It's kind of been rumoured for a while that this would happen. Life is Strange is considered to be a very good game. It was a critical darling, and it's quite groundbreaking in what it did in terms of representation and the episodic model, which is really interesting. So those are two quick stories. We're likely to see a bunch of new franchises from Sega, and Life is Strange 2 is coming. And the final piece of news this week leads us on to our topic of the week, and that is that Lewis is about to get a Netflix subscription because Netflix is to produce a TV series of The Witcher. Now, this news came out on the 17th of May, which was Wednesday. The news came out that Netflix is to produce the Witcher TV series. It then came out the next day that CD Projekt Red are not going to be involved with it. There's a kind of a weird model involved here, and we'll go through it really quickly. Basically, The Witcher was adapted from a series of books, so the games were adapted from a series of books. But the creative director for that series of books didn't have any kind of involvement in the creation of the games, and is actually not particularly happy about the games or about the stories they've told. There's been some animosity between them. He is involved with the creation of the Netflix series, and CD Projekt Red are involved with the creation of their games. So they're kind of two separate things of the same whole. But the Netflix series is being produced. It's the second series from Netflix to be about gaming, of course, because they announced a Castlevania adaptation earlier this year. There's no real sense of when we'll see it, but obviously it's very, very, very early stages. So there's also no kind of casting, director choices. In fact, we don't really even know what this project is at this point. But our topic of the week this week, as a result of that, this got us thinking, what are the 10 franchises that we would like to see adapted from video games? So, Lewis, we had a really good chat about this before we started this show. Do you want to give us a first idea, and we'll sort of bounce back and forth?
Yeah, okay. So the one that I think I would be really interested in watching myself is like a Mass Effect style TV show. Episodic and kind of it very much like this generation's Star Trek. Like a new planet, and new monsters, new enemies, new friends, all that kind of stuff, episodically. And then, they could even weave it in a bit with the bigger stories of the games and have the greater arc of like the collectors and the... Yeah,
so you said this idea before we started the show, and oh God, I love it. So something that I want to pitch back to you is I really like the idea that this wouldn't be about like the Mass Effect A team. This would be like the B team going out and discovering little stories, and then maybe it would be like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to the MCU in that.
Yeah.
Occasionally there's just mention of, oh hey, that's Commander Shepard over there at the bar just off of frame, but you never see them. There's no need for it. It just kind of builds what Mass Effect is.
Yeah, I could see that. But part of me really likes the idea of a Mass Effect movie almost, as well, but kind of it's Mass Effect 1, which I don't know if you've played, but in the beginning of Mass Effect 1 you start as Shepard, and you're just kind of like a normal human and you're not a Spectre and you're not like super special and the council hate humans and all this kind of stuff. And there's very much like a, you know, coming of age story where Shepard becomes like a hero, you know, recognized as a hero by the council. And that's like a really good story for like a movie as opposed to, say, a TV series. But maybe you're right, as I say, like the idea of following a B team around of like maybe exploration of new lands and all that stuff. Because it's something that, like, I don't know about Andromeda, but I know it was not missing so much, but there wasn't as much in the new one. You were always going to places that had already been explored before. So I like the idea of coming somewhere new.
So my counter pitch to you, my idea number 2, is I want to see BioShock, but I want to see it done in the style of Black Mirror. So basically, something that I really love about BioShock is that I think there can be many, many, many more BioShock games, because the rules that make what a BioShock game is can apply to lots of scenarios. And I'd like to explore some of them in the form of a Netflix-style show. So maybe something like 3 episodes per series. Each one of those episodes is connected by a slightly larger storyline that draws them all together. But each one of them is a totally different setting. It's kind of an hour a bit long. And over the course of it, you're just following a character who's working out why this world is broken, in a sense. And then the next episode is a world broken in a different way, and the next episode a world broken in a different way. But then the next series, the thing that's breaking them is different, and the next series, the thing... And, like, in that sense, it can be kind of like the Twilight Zone, in that it can be onwards and telling similar but different stories, if that makes sense. Kind of like what's happening with the Cloverfield movies at the minute. I think something like that would be really cool. And it wouldn't get in the way of the games at all, because you could still have BioShock 4 or whatever it's going to be, and have that exist alongside it, because they can still tell stories together. They don't need to get in the way of each other. I think that would be really cool.
Would you still have the like the BioShock formula?
There would have to be a city, there'd have to be a lighthouse, and there'd have to be a girl. Yes.
Okay.
So imagine if, like, the title card every week was the lighthouse, and that led into... So every week it was a different style lighthouse. Like, one week the lighthouse was on fire, and that told you what was going on in the city. The next week the lighthouse was snowed over, and you were on an Arctic tundra. Like... those style rules would actually kind of conform what it was and make you play by the rules a bit, which can kind of be a good thing in stuff like Netflix dramas where a wide creative range of tools can be a problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that.
So that's my pitch to you. Pitch me number 3.
So I guess the one that I would be excited about as well is Deus Ex myself. I played that a lot and got really into the games. The newer ones, admittedly, but it's such a rich world, and it's kind of ready for... It's kind of good material for, you know, deep stories, especially into, like, some of the shadier parts of the world and some of the kind of, augmented-based racism? You know, like the xenophobia, let's say that. There's lots of stuff there to be explored in interesting storylines. Now, I don't know whether you'd be the main character, whether you'd be Jensen, or whether it would be something else. It's kind of harder to say, because I think in some ways you could have very, like, Jensen's one of these characters that's like, like a John Wick character, where you've got just a badass that kills everything, or, like, you know, just always wins every battle without lifting a finger.
Except that first boss battle, that one can go fuck itself.
Yeah, but then, yes, I mean, finding, like, that kind of thing can tire in like a TV series, but work in a movie. But there's lots to explore in that world.
Yeah, totally. And I think actually it's kind of the perfect time for a Deus Ex adaptation of some form. Later this year, we'll be getting the return of Blade Runner, which was a pretty major influence in the creation of Deus Ex and vice versa. And I think actually a Deus Ex movie that tells a kind of Blade Runner-esque story, but with a slightly more unique slightly less well-known world, which I would argue Deus Ex is, makes a lot of sense right now.
Yeah.
My counter pitch to you, sir, is The Witness. And this one's going to sound a bit weird at first. I'm not even sure how you'd really do it, but one of the things that we'll talk a lot closer to E3 about why I love The Witness, because I have some plans that I haven't told you. But we'll talk a little closer to E3 about why I love The Witness. But one of the reasons I love The Witness is because I never played BioShock 1, right? I didn't get the BioShock... Well, I have now. I've played it now. I think it's an amazing game. But at the time that it came out and it was well known for being what BioShock did, I didn't understand that, and I didn't get that vibe. I wasn't aware of what the cultural conversation around it. So I got that sense from BioShock Infinite. And The Witness gave me that even more. The world is so beautiful and so well realised in that game. And it really makes me think of Lost. There is something happening in that world that doesn't make any sense, that needs you to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I think a Lost style, maybe just one series though, of what is happening in The Witness. And maybe the ending of the series is similar to the ending of the game. Quick spoiler for 30 seconds, in that you don't really find anything out, but there's enough there to make you question and think and wonder about what's going on. I don't know how I'd do it. I don't know what the story structure would be. I don't know who the main character would be or who the group of characters would be. But I think there's a world there that could do amazing things if it was explored properly.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of get what you mean. I struggle to see how exactly it could be done, but I could see what you mean about it being quite an interesting place to explore.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if it were given to me to direct, I have no idea how I'd approach it. But if I were able to sit down and watch it, I know that I'd love it.
Okay.
Halfway mark, then, pitch me number 5.
Well, we discussed this, and I think, like, I can kind of see where you're coming from with it. You said a better Assassin's Creed. I imagine, like, so from my point of view, I'd see it as being sort of a bit more episodic. I think I could see it being done. The thing as well is that, like, one of the things that games can do is tell much longer stories. And I think, like, that's something that Assassin's Creed could do with, actually, as a show, would be to kind of keep it going along, and you would have the future Animus stuff happen rarely, but enough to kind of keep you interested beyond the between the episodes. And then it would be quite easy to, have the different characters separated by seasons and kind of switch it up. I think there's very much a story there to tell. As long as it doesn't become what Ubisoft are currently doing, which is just random place game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Assassin's Creed is meant for longer form. The biggest problem with the movie that came out this year, if anyone's interested, I'll link my review of it in the description, because I kind of go into a bit more detail. But the biggest problem is that the movie tried to do in 2 hours what the game has done in maybe 500. Like, you can't have that much depth, and there's so many interesting threads and relationships, and a TV series could do that perfectly, where a movie would really, really struggle. Even a franchise would really, really struggle. Yeah,
I mean, it's something that I've kind of really started to appreciate lately, is that watching things like on Netflix, watching longer TV shows, is that you can tell a much better story, because it is so much more you can tell, as opposed to a movie where you have to condense it very much. And, like, especially when, just relating it back to Assassin's Creed, if we had an Assassin's Creed version of, like the second game, it would be, here's Ezio, he's this person, done. It would be like a minute long introduction to every character, and it's impossible to, in a movie, to really kind of do more than that. Whereas a TV series, you can have as much as you want, almost.
Okay, so my response to you then is I would like to see, actually, ironically, I would like to see a movie because I don't think this franchise would need a particularly deep story. I think it would be all about the scale and the fight scenes, and that franchise is Titanfall. There's something overtly cinematic about calling in a Titan and watching it drop from the sky. And one of the problems with the game is that it's very grey. And it's very kind of... A lot of shootery Warzone type games have similar aesthetics, similar textures. It's kind of muddy and grey. And something I love about cinema is if this were the Marvel movie equivalent of the game, it would be vibrant in a very different way. So I've thought about a Titanfall movie for a very long time. And I thought... Imagine if the trailer were just somebody pushes something on their wrist, and in the far distance in the desert, this colossal machine beast rains down from the sky and spreads dust as far as the eye can see, and that's just one scene. Titanfall is a game made of scale and action, and I'm not one for movies that do action over story, but I think Titanfall is the kind of thing where you could actually do it quite well and write it well enough that you justify what you're watching on screen.
Yeah.
All right, you'll go.
So one that I didn't actually kind of mention earlier, that's just kind of come up, I think. Something like Max Payne I'd like to see.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Because it has one of these storylines that allows you to do kind of crazy action when it's wanted, and then like deep story at the same time. It's another one of these ones that I think, it's had a movie, and I think the movie was, again, it's not enough time to kind of explore the world and introduce you to the characters and get the feeling for it, I definitely think that, like, it could do a movie. And, like, if you look at, say, even just Max Payne 3, like, there's so much content in that game. You could quite easily make a movie just from that game as it is, but then I think it could have a deep TV series.
Yeah, I mean, Max Payne 3 was quite episodic in its nature already. And it would, what would be really cool would be to give Max Payne to the Wachowski siblings. So they really put bullet time in the movies. So it'd be really cool to be like, here's the thing that perfected it. Go and do that again, but kind of revolutionize it in the way you did before. That's an awesome shout. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Or do I? Okay. No, I'm not. I'll keep my I'll keep my curveball for last. The next franchise I think that deserves some kind of adaptation is Remember Me. If you don't know, and the chances are you don't because it didn't sell amazingly well, Remember Me was the first game created by Don't Nod, who actually make Life is Strange, who we talked about earlier. It's about a world in which memory is kind of a currency. And you can sell memories, you can have memories changed, and there are people who feed on memories. And there is, your character is Nilin, who is played by Kezia Burrows, and she does an amazing job, awesome work by her. You play Nilin, who is able to rewind and alter people's memories, and it's used as a kind of puzzle-solving tool. So, as a game, it's amazing. The world that it's based in is so cool, and it's very rare. So it's set in like a version of Paris, a dystopian version of Paris, and really, like, games are set in New York or California or China or Japan. You don't really get like London. You don't really get Paris, and to see such it feels so Parisian. It's so stylistic. It's just beautifully done. And I'd love to see that world translated to a Netflix show. I'd like it to be a continuation. So I'd love to know what Nilin did next. I'd love to see what that world looks like, how she changes things. I can kind of see it being like Orphan Black, but with a heavier sci-fi concept, so it's less about the relationships and more about the actual kind of MacGuffins. But yeah, I think that would be great, and I think it would be really cool to just carry that story going in some form. I think it definitely deserves it.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I think it is a series that definitely could have very good, very interesting interactions as well. Very different concepts could be looked at, especially with the manipulation powers and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. There's some real moral quandaries you could go into there.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, second to last, make it a good one.
You okay if I mix it up again?
Oh, please do. Mix me all you like.
So there's an in-game TV series called Night Springs.
Oh shit! Is this Alan Wake?
Yeah.
Yes, that's an amazing choice. Yes.
Yeah, I could see something along the lines of sort of Alan Wake meets Twilight Zone, and you know, like, because they did it in the TV series, in the game, and I don't know, I could see that working as an idea, you know, not like necessarily like a straight Twilight Zone, but something with that world in it as well, and something with like, the game is very episodic as it is, and I can see them working that into something at least, especially with the kind of exploration of what's really going on. And yeah,
that's an awesome choice. There are lots of like in-game TV shows that are really little, like cool little ideas. A lot of the stuff from GTA 5 comes to mind, but I totally forgotten that existed. And yeah, that's an awesome shout. My final one is the curveball that I suggested. I would like to see Saints Row come back. And I bet you never thought you'd hear me say that, because I don't like Saints Row. But I would love to see Saints Row come back, and I would like to see it done as an animated comedy. So I'm thinking something like Archer meets a superhero show, but made for adults. So like lots of violence, lots of drug use, lots of meta humor, lots of sex, lots of all the stuff that makes like a Netflix show good, basically. But make it so kind of in the style of like Team America, like totally over the top humor, absolutely like no boundaries. And in that sense, you could do so much with like licensed music. You could do so much with the game's visuals and the way that they set the story. You can almost play on the Netflix formula of just establishing relationships and fucking them up straight away. I think that would be a really, really nice thing to do. I love Archer. I think it's one of the greatest things put to screen of all time. And if anything in video games could be Archer-esque, it would be Saints Row. Also, quick aside, Telltale, for the love of God, make an Archer game, please. I'll fund it myself, please.
Yeah, I could see it happening.
I just want a 5-minute section of a video game where I have a conversation with Babu the Ocelot. That's all I want.
Yeah, and as well, because I mean, like, you can look at the things that Telltale have adapted already and go, you know, they've expanded on the universe and they've added so much more to it. So I would love that kind of thing, especially if it just means you get more interactions with Archer and you get more interactions and like dialogue with characters, you know.
Oh god, like even just thinking about it is making me laugh. So, those are our 10 suggestions for what we think could be made into Netflix adaptations or Netflix movies, because there were some of those thrown in there as well. But is there anything that we missed? Of course there is. There's thousands of video games and we named 10 of them. So you should tell us what it is that we missed. You should also, whatever you're listening to this on, subscribe to it, because we put one of these out every week. and we'd hate for you to miss it, especially as we get closer to E3. We've got some cool stuff that we are planning to do. If you are on iTunes, remember that you can only hear 2 of our episodes because we can't afford an RSS feed. Sorry, but we do have an archive on YouTube which stores everything we've ever done, as well as our video reviews, our indie game interviews, and all of our E3 coverage. We'll get a little bit closer into explaining how that will work iTunes-wise close to E3 this year. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like it. Please subscribe to it. Please share it. That would be really helpful. Come and talk to us on our Facebook page. Tell us what we missed off of this list on our Facebook page, and I shall stop doing plugs. Lewis, what are you going to be playing this week?
So unfortunately, I completed the game that I was addicted with this week, which was Nier Automata.
No!
And now that I've completed it, I'm in a bit of a loss. So I think I'm playing probably The Surge.
Oh, nice.
The robot Souls game. Yeah.
So I had no idea that existed until I saw images and reviews of it this week. That looks pretty cool. It certainly looks like an interesting twist on the Souls thing. I'm really interested in that, so I'd like your thoughts on it. This week I will be playing the ever-living fuck out of Overwatch because I want to try and prestige before the anniversary event starts in 4 days. That's not going to happen. So that I can get some of those loot boxes. I also want to finish Dishonored 2 at some point so that I can think about starting Mass Effect at some point. But I don't know if that will happen before E3, and I imagine E3 is going to pile on a bunch of new games. So I'm kind of getting backlog anxiety, to be honest. But that's what we're playing this week. We'd love to know what you're playing this week. And either way, we will see you next week. But until then, the game's up.